Can you preserve a shadow? This is not just a poetic title. I'm really truly asking you. You, out there in the relative darkness, will you think about it for me? Can you preserve a shadow? A shadow in motion, in performance, a shadow at your birthday and at your funeral, a shadow communicating autonomously, a shadow that is the receptacle of your community's collective memories. This one. Can you preserve this shadow? For this is the one, passed down through generations of practitioners' hands and hearts, that conjures, awakens, and enlivens. In performance, the shadow is not just the absence of light, but an immaterial medium through which ghosts pass. Chinese shadow puppet practitioners and their audience members dwell in this darkness and revel in its potent ritual power during performances. For birthdays, funerals, house raisings, weddings, and nearly every community holiday, affective immateriality anointed the ceremony, engaged with the beyond, and connected the living with the ghosted past. As the most widespread puppet form in China, shadow puppet performances have been a mainstay in rural communities for over 1,500 years. In 2018, these masters and practitioners and their shadows are navigating survival after a glorious run. Modernization, cultural revolution, urbanization, and globalization have proved to be overwhelming. Preservation efforts are already underway. Museums, festivals, and tourism, commodification of cultural artifacts, and educational endeavors have rushed in to try and save this form. But save it for what? And for whom? And how? Preserving performance detritus within institutions, repeating heritage performances for non-community members, selling commodified cultural artifacts, and transferring the situated learning transmission method of shadow puppetry into the formal classroom does not preserve the form for the practitioners, but for everyone else. And by deeming shadow puppetry preservable, the remaining practitioners have experienced an acceleration towards institutionalization and decline because of the preservation efforts. The few traditional artists who are still performing are now expected to remain traditional in the antiquated sense that they never change. But the practitioners of vernacular arts, performance forms, and ghosts have always operated on responsiveness and change. They do not like stasis. Over the course of 10 years, I have extensively canvassed 9 provinces in mainland China and work with dozens of traditional practitioners, nearly all that remain. And every single one of those practitioners I have worked with have made it clear that if given the choice, the best way to continue any vernacular immaterial performance form is just to keep working, creating, and performing for audiences. They feel that preservation is death of another kind. What if this was our basis for a new method of preservation, specifically for vernacular performance forms? Simply supporting the practitioners to continue working, creating, and performing for their vernacular. Not capturing, saving, or entombing, but remaining alive, vibrant, performative, and creative. We would have to prioritize apprenticeship as the main method of transmission, foster practitioner-driven creativity, and champion performance as the central mode of dissemination. If you're with me, let's use this place and space as a moment of intervention for them, the practitioners, the shadow puppets, and the form. Don't worry, both you and I won't consider ourselves part of this illustrious lineage. We are simply part of the supporting milieu that wants the shadow puppets to be touched, appreciated from up close, and moved with hands in front of the light. The practitioners I work with would much rather have your unpracticed hands on these puppets, meeting them, seeing what they're all about, than to have them hanging here, lifeless, or, worse yet, behind a pane of glass. Please step behind the shadow screen and take one of these translucent leather shadow puppets in your hands. Watch your step. There. Great. Now, take the shadow figure off its hook and take the rods in your hand like this. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. The main body rod in your non-dominant hand and the two hand rods in your dominant hand. I'm very sorry, by the way, if you're left-handed. You're going to have to flip this yourself, but what can I say? It's a right-handed world. Yeah, it's hard, right? But don't worry. They say if you can eat with chopsticks, you too can learn to be a shadow puppeteer. Now, take that puppet and press it directly up against the fabric screen. Yes, just like that. Don't be shy. You're not going to hurt the screen or the puppet. Now, just try to make this thing move, or let it tell you what it wants to do. And here is some motivating music. There. Well, hope they were nice to a beginner like you. They were incredible, right? Now, just so you know what mastery looks like, check out Master Leo, puppeteering from behind the screen. His puppet even has those silk water sleeves. Ha! Yeah, he's pretty good. Now you know what you're working towards. So, now that you've seen a bit of Chinese shadow puppetry in action and tried some for yourself, what do you think? What remains of the shadow puppet when you enliven it? Is there something that can only be communicated through the shadow itself? And what is lost from the original practice? For certainly something is always lost in preservation and performance, while something always remains. More importantly, does a method of continuance with apprenticeship, creativity, and performance at the center preserve something that the other methods don't, even if it loses something they already have? Would it benefit us to add this to the roster of preservation methods? I think it would. The practitioners, who are working so hard to keep the lineage of shadows and ghosts alive, think so too. Thank you. Well, now you can check Chinese shadow puppetry off your bucket list. Cool. Where you found it, and thanks so much.